He took the direct approach instead. He said, Joe, you know what this is? And Joe says, yes, sir. He said, what is it, Joe? He said, it's a needle. He said, that's right. You know what I'm going to do with this needle? And Joe said, not yet. He said, well, Joe, let me tell you what I'm going to do with this needle. He said, I'm going to have to give you a shot in your chin. And he said, not only one shot, but it'll probably be 2 and maybe even 3 shots right there in your chin. And Joe, listen to me. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. He said, but I promise you it won't hurt very long. He said, can you count to 10? Now, every little self-respecting boy or girl at age 3 can count to 10, and Joe was almost indignant. Yes, sir. He said, well, let me tell you, by the time you count to 10, my shots won't hurt you anymore. He said, then it gets easy. He said, then I give you the cat whiskers, and he showed the twine that was going to go in, and he said, now, this is what you're going to feel. And he took and he tugged on his chin. He said, does that hurt? Joe said, no, sir. He said, well, that's it. That's all it's going to feel like. He said, there's one other thing. He said, it wouldn't be a big deal if you were a big boy, but you're such a little boy. Yeah, if I had a big boy here, I'm sure I could get some help from him, but you're such a little boy. I don't know if a little boy, he kept stressing the phrase, little boy. Now, how many of y'all know a 3-year-old boy? How many of them think of themselves as little boy? Joe looked at me, I'm a big boy. He said, you are? He said, that's right. He said, well, then maybe you can help me. Joe said, what do you need? He said, if you were a big boy, what I would ask you to do is lay on this table, put your hands under your little butt, stretch out there, and raise your chin up in the air so those lights can shine right on that chin. But you're such a little boy. Joe said, I can do that. He said, you can? He said, yes, sir. He said, let's see. Joe flopped over on the table, ran his hands under his butt, and stretched out. Now I was witness to all of this. The doctor said, well, if you can do that, we're about ready to get started. At exactly that moment in time, the door, the back door, the door to the examination room swung open, and in they walked. 2 of them, nurses. I knew they were coming. I'd been expecting them. I refer to them as the restraining crew. And I've been expecting them at any moment, and now here they are. But surprisingly, they did not do what I really expected them to do. You know what you expect them to do. You expect them to come to the little boy. You expect them to hold him real tight or wrap him up in what they call a papoose or something. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I consider myself a helpful parent. I want to help the doctor do what needs to be done, but I already decided nobody is going to hold that kid except his dad. Not that I wanted to hold him, you understand, but I didn't want a stranger subduing my child. And so I already made my way to the table, but surprisingly enough, one of the nurses did walk immediately to the table where Joe was already laying. And she got right behind his head, and very gingerly, she took her hands and put them both beside his head. Now, her purpose was not to restrain him. Her purpose was to sort of just keep his head stable at that moment. And by the way, in case you haven't been around a 3-year-old little boy, you cannot hold a 3-year-old little boy by his head if he does not want to be held. That wasn't her purpose. The other nurse, surprisingly, didn't even come any further into the room. She just stopped by the door and just stood there. The doctor was oblivious, apparently, to all of this. He was just moving around, doing his thing, getting his instruments together. And all of a sudden, he approaches the table, and he leans over to Joe, and he says, well, Joe, I'm about ready. What about you? Yes, sir. And that doctor took that needle, and he gave my son 3 shots in his chin. Now, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being by that bedside when that happens, but I'm going to tell you I would have rather taken 100 of those shots, personally, than to watch my son take 1 of them as he did. But as that needle pierced flesh, as those nerve endings came alive, as that message was sent to the brain that this is pain, my son said, and I quote, "Oh!" And that's it. He tensed up and said, "Oh!" And then immediately, as the doctor continued to dispense the medicine, the doctor started to count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, continued to dispense the medicine. 5, when he got to 5, Joe went, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're counting too slow. That doctor gave my son three shots, and you've got to believe me, as a witness to the event, I never saw the kid squirm, I never saw the kid wiggle, I never saw the kid fight, I never saw the kid cry. He never even took his hands out from under his little butt. All he said was, And the doctor proceeded to talk to him all through the process. When those shots were over, we waited a few minutes. When that medication had deadened that spot, he turned to Joe and he said, I'm about to do the cat whiskers. Are you ready? And Joe said, yes, sir. And he proceeded to give him 7 stitches in his chin, all the while my son talked to this doctor, and the doctor talked to him. Now remember what I do for a living. I'm standing beside the bedside of my son, and I'm watching this event unfold. And as a full-time professional speaker and trainer, I try to witness events, I try to understand why they're happening, and then I try to gain from them and give back to other audiences what I've learned from the experience. And as I'm watching this thing, it's not unfolding like I expected at all. I was expecting my son to resist. I was expecting them to have to restrain him. I was expecting a horrible experience, and it just wasn't happening. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a great kid. This kid takes after his daddy. How many times do we like to take credit for other people's successes? Well, anyway, I don't know how long the entire event took. I'm guessing 15, 20, certainly no more than 25 minutes. But when the doctor had done his complete work, when he had gotten those 7 stitches well placed, when he had done everything he needed to do, he leaned over to Joe and he said, well, Joe, I've done all I need to do. You're ready to go. And Joe popped up on that table and looked up and said, thank you, sir. And I don't believe I've ever felt a prouder moment as a parent. Well, you know, I learned a long time ago, when someone does something right, recognize it, reward it, and hopes that it will be repeated. And I snatched that kid off that table. Oh, I'm hugging on him, I'm kissing on him. His mom is too. You know, we're praising him. Yeah, we shook hands with the doctor and thanked him. And yeah, we paid on the way out. By the time I got him in that van, I'm promising him everything. Joe, man, you were so cool. You did so good. Man, I'm so proud of you. Let's go to Dairy Queen. Let's go to Toys R Us. What do you want to do, man? And of course, he was up for all of it. But eventually, I had to take him home. And I took him home, and I dropped Susan off, and of course, she was with Joe, and then I had to go back to work. Now, what I do is a little bit different than some people. I don't have a designated task that I have to do every minute of the day. And sometimes I have a little wiggle room built into my schedule. And so when I got to my office that day, still thinking about this experience that had unfolded during the course of the morning, I just couldn't get it out of my mind, so I decided to focus on it in particular. And so I took out a pad of paper, and I wrote on the top of the pad of paper, Joe Hero. Because, see, that's what Joe had been to me. I had watched him act heroically. And I was going to try to figure out what was it that he had done that made him such a hero to me. And so I took my pen and I was ready and I was thinking, well, the first thing he did was, and I started writing down, and then I thought, well, he did that, but he didn't think of that. I mean, that was somebody else encouraging. Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing he did was, well, he did it, but he didn't think that up either. And over the next 10 minutes, as I tried to make my son the hero of this story, I came to a stark reality. And the reality was this: there was a hero in this story. It just didn't happen to be my son. Instead, the hero in the story was who? The doctor. The doctor. And when it finally struck me, and when I finally got past this moment of wanting my son to be the hero at any cost, I simply turned the pad of paper over and wrote on the back of that, hero-doctor. And within 5 minutes, I learned what I believed to be the key elements of face-to-face communication.